In this episode called 6 Weeks to Happy, we'll discuss things like the 5 sources of anxiety, how to move beyond a survival based mindset, how to bring together and integrate the survival based and thriving mindsets, experiencing emotions beyond good or bad, positive or negative, and thriving in the messy. Now, here are some things to ponder. Happiness seems to change as we grow older. What did you need as a child to be happy? What do you now need as an adult to be genuinely happy? When you consider being in a state of genuine happiness today, what's required for you to break free from old ways of thinking and feeling? Where in your life could you add some more happy now? And why must it happen right now? Welcome to Weekly Wins and Losses. My name is James Hepner, former real estate entrepreneur turned self-development hacker, coach, and fulfillment strategist. Each week, we bring you a thought to wrestle with that'll help you live fully alive and gain more life. Real life is made up of both wins and losses. Both were designed for your good. That's basic reality. Without facing and learning how to embrace your losses for greater gain, you miss out. You leave 50% of your life experience on the table. So with that, let's begin the show. Welcome, friends. Today I have on the show with me someone that I've been waiting to interview. She sent me a little book. This is not just a little book. This is a nice read book, and this is her book. And so, Zahra, Karsan, 6 Weeks to Happy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, James. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Talk to the listeners. Share with us, who are you as a human? Who are you? And what do you do?
Who am I as a human? Well, I'll introduce myself, and I think that'll give you an idea of who I am and what my passions are. So, I'm an author, speaker, and mindset coach. I've worked with C-level executives and individuals over the years, and I've led projects from $5 to $45 million. And then I became a master at producing results for large companies. And I thought, it occurred to me that most people don't take the same approach to producing results in their personal lives. And I
Mm.
thought, well, there's an interesting life gap. Let me just, dial into that a little bit. And so I opened a coaching practice so I could help my clients produce those same results. And what I came to realize was I started seeing patterns in how human beings showed up in front of me. And it didn't matter if it was a CEO of a global company, or a mid-range manager, or somebody just starting out, or even a student. We have the same core stresses and anxieties that prevent us from achieving that level of happiness and success that we're all, searching for. And then I was so fascinated with what I was seeing in my coaching practice, and these universal themes in fear patterns and strategies of behavior that can be shifted in terms of mindset, that I thought, I want to understand the science behind this, because I need the data. I'm your biggest skeptic, because
Mhm.
before I can share something with anyone, or even prove it to myself, I need to see it and believe it. I need to see the data. So I studied neuroscience because I wanted to understand optimal brain health. I wanted to understand, where do thoughts and feelings live, and what is this experience of the mind and the soul, and honestly, what is this human journey? What are we here for? And why do some people, seem to have the secrets to happiness and inner peace, and other people seem to have the secrets to great success and wealth and abundance, and so many of the rest of us were just stopped somewhere along the way.
Mhm.
And it took me 30 years to unpack that for myself. So I decided, you know what? This is a book. I was searching for years to give people the tools to begin the work of coaching themselves, because so much unnecessary stress and suffering is happening right now. And with some really easy to use tools, we can all just make that shift and get on the road to happiness and success. And that's why I wrote this book, is really with the intention of helping
Mm.
people remove those barriers to their success and finally find that peace and that joy and that freedom that we're all searching for.
So much what you just brought up there, gosh, Zara, we're gonna be on the call for a while. This is not gonna be a 3 hour conversation, but it will be and it's gonna be full of a lot of juicy stuff. So thanks for opening it up with all that goodness. Um, question I have for you is
Mhm.
if you could just distill down in and through your work, what would you say are the core anxieties? And before you answer, something to cue it up is we all have fear, but being
Yes.
afraid of the fear, that's the spike protein that lights it up, that creates the trouble, basically. Right.
Yes.
So what would you say are the core anxieties that you've experienced your people to experience?
Well, what I've seen in my coaching practice, and this is a very rare phenomenon, because in the world of science and empirical data,
Mm,
if you have a 70% or more result, that's generally perceived as a good result. But I was seeing this pattern in like literally 100% of my clients, and I was fascinated by that. And what I came to realize is we actually evolved to be good at survival. And so even our brains, the way that our brains evolved, it's in three parts. So we first have that, it's called the reptilian brain. It's that first tiny piece of the brain that's responsible for our survival instincts, like our stress response, our fight or flight response. And that's a great tool for when we actually have real physical danger present in our lives. So back in the day when we
mm,
were living in the bush rather than, in the societies that we live in today, when there was a real danger, we could flee. That, fight or flight response acted like a rush of adrenaline, almost like a gas pedal. It helped us run and flee from danger. But then our brains would signal our bodies that, okay, we're safe, let's come back to calm.
mm,
So that's the first part. The second part of the brain then is the mammalian brain, and that developed our thoughts and feelings. So thoughts and feelings are higher, are housed in one part of the brain. Then you have your fight or flight and your stress response, your survival response running another part of the brain. And then your third, the most recent part of the brain, the neocortex or prefrontal cortex, is really your CEO of the brain. It's where we do our critical thinking and decision making. And so it occurred to me as I started looking at patterns in what I was seeing in my coaching clients that the science was actually showing me why there was inner conflict,
mm,
why there were
mm,
these disconnects. And so I thought, what are the mechanisms we need to really bring that back into balance? And so to speak to your question, what are the core anxieties? I found that there were five groupings of limiting beliefs or stress sources of our core anxiety, and they
mm,
come in the form of beliefs that may not sound, I'll give you what they sound like when you sort of chunk it up into the abstract. um, but how they show up in your life might sound something different. So take it with a grain of salt, and I'll walk you through a couple of examples just so we can see how that plays out in our in our being, and how we approach life and interact with the people and with our goals even. And so the first one is the I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. We all have some form of that, or we know
mm,
people
mm,
that have some form of that. And so it doesn't always sound like I'm not good enough. It could sound something like, if you have a goal, let's say, of starting a business, it might sound like, oh, I don't know if I have the business acumen or the skills to really run a startup, or wouldn't know where to begin. Where would I begin? Then it might sound like, I don't know if I have the financial skills or the right know-how or the resources to
mm,
be able to do that. Or it might sound like, not everyone is meant to do that. I think I'm just going to hang back and do what I do. And the reality is that 92% of Americans don't even have a financial plan for their future. And so they're living from paycheck to paycheck. And that phenomenon is pretty scary. And that leads into the next one of those core beliefs. So the first one is I'm not enough. The second one is I'm not safe. Well, if you're living from paycheck to paycheck, we're constantly living in a high level of stress. So you constantly have those worries plaguing you. How am I going to pay my bills? Where am I going to be in 10 years? Are my kids going to have enough, to eat? Am I going to be able to pay for their education? And then what does my financial future look like? And that's a really scary space to live from, because you're constantly being triggered by stress, and it takes an enormous amount of energy to stay in that stuck place. And again, it doesn't always sound like I'm not safe, right? It sounds like it could have been some very benign moment of exposure. So we are 5% conscious mind, 95% subconscious, unconscious. And what that means is 5% of how we think and feel and how we live and our behaviors, our choices for our behaviors, happen in our conscious awareness. Everything else is happening beyond our awareness, underneath the surface. And so that feeling of I'm not safe doesn't really sound like that. It's going to impact you in how you take risks in your life, for example. Will you invest in yourself to gain those critical skills in order to start that business you've always wanting to be taking? And if you have a feeling that you're not safe, then how does that impact your relationships? Are you able to fully trust someone and be open-hearted and vulnerable with them, like Brene Brown talks about when she talks about vulnerability and the ability to really connect? And so that sort of core belief runs in your background, almost like running on autopilot, and it's running the show. The next one is I'm alone, or I'm not supported in this world. And it doesn't sound like that. It might sound like if I want something done right, I have to do it alone. Or if I want something done right, I have to do it by myself.
Mm.
And so when you think about how busy our lives are right now, if you're in a relationship, if you have a job or a career or a business or children, then you have to micromanage all of those areas in your life, plus somehow find enough time to sleep and look after your physical health with nutrition and exercise. And all of that takes time and energy and planning. And so if you really feel like you're in this world alone, how are you interacting in your relationships? Again, are you able to rely on your partner and fully open up and be in a fully committed and loving, supportive relationship? Because if you have an unconscious conversation or a story running in your background that says, I'm not supported, then we're constantly looking for it's creating tension in our relationships. And then take that to the professional world. If you feel that you're alone and unsupported, do you think you're going to be relying on your teams, or do you think you're going to take a position without knowing and micromanage every little thing? Well, that is exhausting. That's a really, really tiring way to go through life and to go through your workday as well. And so those are the first three. And then the fourth one is I'm not deserving of wealth or abundance. And again, if it doesn't sound like that, it's going to sound something like, what are the money beliefs you heard growing up? So here's how it works. If you think of your timeline, your lifeline, then before the age of 7, we were pure unconscious mind. So everything that we heard and everything that we experienced was just processed beyond our awareness at our subconscious level. We weren't old enough or mature enough to be able to process complex situations. So what happens is we begin to start telling ourselves a story for why certain things are happening in our lives. And that's where these limiting beliefs and core sources of anxiety come from. And then the last one is, so speaking to I'm not deserving of wealth or abundance, if you had money beliefs that you heard in a movie or an aunt and uncle visiting or from a parent or a family member or friend, those just get absorbed into your subconscious, and they become part of your
Mm.
story without you even consciously choosing that. So if that happened unconsciously, how do we get in control of that? And how do we, take our
Mm.
power back,
Mhm.
if you will, and change the narrative? And then the final one is the I'm not lovable, I'm not deserving of love, or some form of that. And again, you talk a lot about how language has to be really important and really powerful and really specific. And it does, because everything we hear and feel at that unconscious level just gets processed without our awareness, and we create a story about it and how we need to operate in the world. And we're not really given the tools to shift that narrative or to shift that story. And I wanted to set out to figure out how can I help people shift their mindset and really get away from that.
Yeah, that's it's incredible. You said that so eloquently. So thanks for setting the tone and the stage. I know a lot of people talk about it, and I think we have to begin there. We have to begin with the core piece of the infrastructure, because the infrastructure is what we stand on. And so often when we look at society, it tends to suggest that we need to make something bad or wrong in order for
Mhm.
us to move to the next level. And so
Yeah.
we're not suggesting here that the survival response is bad or wrong. It's a beautiful thing. It keeps us alive. It keeps us safe. So what we're kind of opening up there is fear is helpful. Being afraid of fear, that isn't very helpful. And so I think what always comes up for me, and when I do my work with my clients, is you see this come up. And I know even in spaces in my own world where I look at something that I perceive as dangerous, but I know I need to now make safe,
Right.
right? How do we change without excluding it? Because often we're like, well, that was the junk of my life. That was the so we tend to think it's wasted, and then when we think it's wasted, what instantly happens? We shame and blame ourselves. How could we not have known? When in essence, but we're here now because of that. And so, um, you know, oh my goodness, yeah, yeah. So the only way that you and I both know that transformation happens is integration, and
Mm-hmm.
integration is to bring together and
Yes.
is to actually go, okay, so there's something that is maybe if we stay just at survival, that's what an animal does. An animal looks for safety or where's it most safe. That's all that it constantly does. You and I can be looking out the window, but not looking for safety and perceiving is it more dangerous or more safe. We're just staring out the window. So the human being has that third eye. We could do something a little different, right? The neuroscience shows us. So my question to you is this: how do you make safe with your clients? I'm curious here. How do you make safe with clients the emotions that come up in survival? So the anxiety emotions, like how do you make this safe? Because unless we make safe from within, we're just
Mm-hmm.
trying to push them out and saying, well, it's in spite of those things that I am today. When in reality, it's because of those things that I am today. So how do you make that safe? Because we must do that work. If not, we don't integrate. We're not getting very far. And we're kidding ourselves because now we're creating an inauthentic version of happiness. That's not real. And people can't respect that. They don't want that.
Yeah, I think, I think this whole world of gratitude and affirmations and this idea that happiness means you need to have a smile on your face the entire time is, I think is a little trite, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the word you used, well, you used two words that were very important. How do you, well, expression, make it safe. And the other one, the other word you used that was important was integration. And so I think of it, I talked about the conscious mind and the unconscious mind being almost separate. One is survival based.
Mm-hmm.
So if 95% of you is survival based and 5% of you is running the show, then how do you integrate those two? And why this is important is because it's your conscious mind, that 5% of you, that's the one setting the goal. So it's the goal setter. And it's that 95% of you, the unconscious part of you, that's the goal getter. So if they're playing on separate teams, how on earth are we ever going to reach our goals towards happiness and success? And how you do that is through creating some form of integration between the conscious and the unconscious mind. And how you can do that, the quickest way you can do that is to allow those patterns to show up and bring them to your
Mm-hmm.
conscious awareness. Because once you see a pattern of behavior that shows up in your life, if you don't do the work to heal it or move past it, it's kind of like seeing the fear and doing it anyway, right? We recognize it. Thank you, fear, for showing up and keeping me safe. Thank you. That's what you're
Mm-hmm.
do is keep me alive, keep me safe, and protect me from harm. Thank you for that. I respect you. I'm going to do it anyway. So once you bring those conversations and you can see your patterns of behavior, and again, because it doesn't always show up, and finding the exact language and the wording combination that resonates with your particular belief system that's running that show is important. So there are some keys that I go to in that book of, and so lots of examples and case studies where you can see yourself in those examples. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so you have power over it. And in the world of positive psychology, when we talk about emotions and unprocessed emotions, we like to say, if you can name it, then you're in charge of it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it has power over you. And so, how you make that safe is, well, first of all, you give people the tools to be able to see their own patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And as you bring to the conscious awareness what your fear patterns are, because you have a limiting belief and then you have all of these patterns of behavior or strategies of behavior and how to keep, which are survival based, and how to keep yourself alive and protect you from harm, but they don't always work in alignment with our goals towards happiness and success. In fact, they work against them.
Hmm.
But as you unravel those unconscious beliefs, there are emotions attached to those feelings of sadness or anger or despair or loneliness. And once you unlock the patterns of behavior simply by recognizing how you behave in certain scenarios, those emotions also start to come to the surface to be healed. And I promise you, I think most people, when they think of going down this pattern of work, or going down this road of doing that self work, they think of it as massive changes that they need to make in their lives, but they don't have to be.
Hmm.
It can take as little as 10 minutes a day just to do the work and kind of recognize the patterns. And then you don't really have to do anything. It kind of shifts automatically just because you've shifted. Just because
Hmm.
those emotions and those patterns of behavior, those fear patterns have come to the light so that you can see them, they now no longer have power over you. So
Hmm.
the next time something shows up, let's say we're talking about love and you've decided your, let's say your limiting belief, there might be one or two that are running the show. So let's say you have I'm not loved and I'm alone in this world. Well, if you have an underlying story running in your autopilot that says, I'm not lovable and I'm alone and I don't have support, and you're in a relationship, how does that play out in your relationship? Now, once you see it, you can see yourself before
Hmm.
you have the reaction that
Hmm.
was running
Hmm.
the survival train before, and you can say, no, I'm not going to get on that train this time. I'm going to just, it gives you that pause right
Hmm.
before you react to say, okay, this is how I would have reacted in past, and I can choose to be different now that I know where it's coming from. Or you can just have more control. You may get on the train, because once you get on that train, we've seen it take off. You find yourself in a pattern behavior you don't want to be in. You know it's happening. You
Hmm.
can't for the life of you stop it, but you know you're going to have some cleanup when you're done.
Hmm.
But at least now, and we all know what that feels like, right? It's the human experience. And so when you get the train to stop, you can actually pause and say, whoa, where did that come from? Oh my God, these are my patterns showing up again. And you can have an honest and open conversation and say, oh my God, this is where it comes from. Babe, I need you to help me help myself. This is what it is. This is where it comes from. And so how can we help by not triggering each other? These are the things that pull it up for me. And so the next time it happens, you have more power and more power and more power over it. And that's where the genius is to finally get in control of that 95%. And as you do that, those emotions start getting healed, and more empowering emotions start replacing that. And then you begin this conscious unconscious mind integration. And once that starts, I mean, everything else just becomes easier in life. Everything starts to flow. It's the feeling of like taking the training wheels off, almost like you didn't know something was slowing you down. It's like driving with the
Hmm.
parking brake on almost. And then all of a sudden it's off and you go, oh, wow, I have so much more choice over how I want to think and feel in any moment. And it's a wonderful place to be.
I think restoring oneself and helping other people to restore themselves back to the authority and the power of who they are is incredible work. And when I think about the power of the pause, we all can claim it, we all can own it, we all can live it.
Mm.
And I think when I think about the power of the pause, when I just pause and I listen to what you're talking about and talking with us here, I tend to observe society in today's space as feeling kind of resentful. I'll never forget years ago, someone mentioned this to me, and he says expectations are pre-planned resentments. Expectations are pre-planned resentments.
Hmm.
And to be totally honest, when I think about success and happy, firstly, let me say this. I love what you're talking about. I'm always about going beyond duality. So I'm not choosing a side. We're poking things all over just to make better, right?
Yeah.
Making things better. Success and happy. I love it. I think sometimes it seems like society is getting very resentful that they're not thriving. They
Hmm.
they expect to thrive, and then I think, why is this? And it's interesting because if you look at today's world, like I got my cell phone here, it's not on, but how many people when they scroll through social media, their thumb is just, are they processing? Chances not really. You cannot process that fast. It doesn't work. And so when I think about not processing, I think about, I wonder if we're getting resentful that we're not thriving. And the infrastructure leads us to the fact that we're just trying to like scroll quickly past survival. We're just trying to get beyond it, beyond it, beyond it, beyond it. When in
Yeah.
essence, unless you can be truly grateful for the very thing, like you said, that keeps you alive, unless you can find benefit, you're never going to find the safety to even dare to reach for what you think you're good enough for or not. I don't care. It's just the human being doesn't take a step when it's not safe. It just doesn't do that. So,
Yeah.
so to the point, and I love your book. What I'd like to do is take a part of this conversation now and just really settle down. For me, I'm settling down. You can do what you want. I'm going to really just distill and really get still in observing what are the benefits of all the anxiety markers of survival. And we talked about them. Am I surviving? Am I safe? Am I enough? Am I alone?
Mhm.
Am I deserving? What are the benefits? Like, there's a benign and hostile side to everything. And the human being is most intelligent. So speaking of awareness, we're most intelligent. Neuroscience shows us when we can entertain a plethora of thoughts without feeling pressured to adopt any single one of them, we begin to realize there's something there. And so here's the play. Why society is gunning just for thriving. I think sometimes what we do is we have this desire to, how would I say, reductionist thinking. And let's be honest, America did win. The war against the Germans, we were the ones that really reduced it down to fine art. We built a bigger war machine. So I think we have a deep appreciation for how we took care of a tyrant. And so therefore, we're still leaning on reductionism, which is the pattern is let's exclude something so we can move forward. And unless we address the safety issue of if we don't feel safe and if we don't like really love and see the benefits of all these anxieties, that's right. We don't need to be afraid of the fear of that anxiety. We just need to like enjoy and appreciate. So, but I'm saying actually what we're solving for, I think here and optimizing for is authentic happiness. That's
Yeah.
deeply based. So there's joy, in my opinion. Tell me what you think, but there's joy found in the morning, morning. When the sun rises, there's joy in the morning, but there's joy, beautiful joy found in the mourning. There's
Yes.
beautiful joy found on both sides. So it's not in spite of, it's because of. And so if you like, let's go on a little journey. Let's talk about the benefits of each of the anxieties that you listed. So yeah, you want to start?
Sure.
So the question is, how do we strengthen both our mind and body effectively? Maybe I should add, why is strengthening our mind and body even something that we might want to seriously consider implementing on a daily basis? It's all about maximizing your opportunities, maximizing your ability to experience a rich life instead of a mediocre life, maximizing your ability to bring to yourself and others around you what you were set on this earth to deliver and enjoy. What's not to love about stretching yourself and experiencing the truth about the incredible capacity that you actually have? Listen, I really value you and I want to help you maximize your life by sharing a few of the specific strategies that have made all the difference in my life. I want you to feel mentally and physically strong so you'll be well prepared when you're most needed, so that your mind and body will be entrained to know exactly what to do when others are running for the exit signs, and so that you'll activate your ability to easily identify the opportunity no matter how challenging the situation. So, I've carefully put together a well-curated resource that will make it super easy for you. Simply go to www.jamesheffner.com/self-help hacker, where you will be able to see some of my favorite books and specific biohacking modalities, supplements, and biohacking experiences that will allow you to feed your mind and body the specific and exact ingredients that will give you the mental and physical edge. Now, I should note, you'll see listed a grouping of biohacking experiences like whole body cryotherapy, bone density, etc., that you can experience at our biohacking lab located on the west coast of Canada in White Rock, BC. If you live nearby, feel free to book your session as you wish. Also, you'll want to take note of the specific discount code section that allows you to purchase products from my favorite vendors anywhere from 10 to 25% off by simply using the discount code JAMES. I hope you enjoy. To your life force, to your strength, here we go. If you like, let's go on a little journey. Let's talk about the benefits of each of the anxieties that you listed. So yeah, you want to start?
Sure. Well, let's talk about it as a global theme to begin with. Those survival mechanisms are built to protect you and keep you safe, and that's a really beautiful thing. If, for example, if you've read Malcolm Gladwell's The Outliers, Secrets of Success, for example, he talks about 3 steps to anyone attaining a great level of success. Number 1 is there was a slight. So something in life made, some of these high achieving athletes and entrepreneurs feel like they weren't enough. And so what it gave them was it gave them a drive to succeed. And many of the top CEOs I've worked with have this, now we're talking about motivation. Are you motivated by the by the dangling carrot in front of you, or are you motivated by the stick? And so if you had a slight at a young age that made you feel like you were never going to be good enough, never successful enough, and something inside you said, oh yeah, just watch. There's this famous line by Lady Gaga. I think she said it, someone she was dating said, oh, you're never going to be anything. And she said, one day you will not be able to walk anywhere to get a coffee. I'm paraphrasing, but you will see me and hear me everywhere. It's that inner voice. And I think that inner voice is, we know that there's a survival side of us and it's running the show most of the time, but there's the other part of us, that soul, that spirit, that inner child, that force is really powerful. And if we can just get quiet enough to hear it, to listen to it, and allow it to take the driver's seat, and have that conscious unconscious mind integration, then we can move beyond. Then we shift a conversation in its entirety. And I think in your last question, you were talking about what is this resentment that we have towards thriving or not thriving. And I think it's because we intrinsically know we are meant to be powerful beings, and we were just never given the tools. There wasn't anything I was ever searching for in the last 30 years that could have unpacked this for me. And so I went on my own search, and that's how I ended up here, was how do we move beyond survival-based thinking and really step into our power? So I became fascinated with 2 different groups of people. One group of people who, from time to time, you just meet those people in life that have that little sparkle in their eye or that little bounce in their step, and they know the secrets to life, and you gravitate, your energy just attracts towards them, and you just want to learn from them. So that's one group. And then the other group was those really highly successful people. But I don't just mean people that did well in life. I mean people that had a huge vision beyond what most people even would dare to dream of. Like, what gave them the inclination to think, oh my God, I'm going to run a multi-billion-dollar company, or I'm going to start a company in my garage like Jeff Bezos, and now it's, whatever it is now. And so I became fascinated with that gap, and I thought, how do we bridge that gap for people? And I think that the secret is in bringing this integration into place, and really educating a whole group of people on how to start doing that work for themselves, because that's where everything shifts.
So I love where we're headed, because we're just beginning. We won't go 3 hours, but we're just beginning.
Yes.
Because I think what we all are always wanting to do is activating the voice from within. Tony Robbins says, right, unleash the power from within. I like to, I don't know where I picked this up. It's something to the extent of increase our signal to noise ratio. And I think so often, like when we think about COVID, they say that the reason that society, if you look in general, was deeply concerned is we were all having a fear that we were not progressing fast enough. And I think there we go again, progressing fast enough. Where is there room to process? There isn't. We're just thinking, move ahead, move. I should be thriving. I should be thriving. I should be thriving. And it's like, wait a minute, wait a minute. Maybe we haven't even addressed the survival response. So if I think about it, I think about survival in the way of, and just to unpack, when I think about, am I enough? You know how thankful I am that I feel that every moment, every day? My
Yeah.
survival reminds me of that. I'm so thankful because
Yes.
am I enough keeps my ego in check. It's the most beautiful thing. When I think about, am I safe? It's like, yeah, that's right. Am I safe? Unless I create safety for myself and put the oxygen mask on myself to love myself first.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot expand the safety. So am I safe? It's incredible. Think about the thrivingness in the safety of that. It's just amazing. When I think about, am I alone? Wow, the reality is so incredible. Of course I'm alone. What's the bad news about being alone? When I was born, I separated from my mother's womb. They say there's trauma. If you study the undertow of it, they say there's that subtle trauma. You realize you're a separate human being, which means I'm alone, which is to say that there are unique things that I have that other people, when I act on them, they're going to be like, what are you doing? They don't understand us. So it's like so comforting. Am I alone? Yeah, I realize I am alone, and it doesn't need to spook me. I don't need to be afraid of that. I'm integrating and bringing it safely in here. And then it's like, am I deserving of this? Well,
Mm-hmm.
of course, if I didn't feel this, how could I and empathize with other people who have that spot? Am I deserving of it? It's like, to be honest, the truth is, yes, I am, and no, I'm not. Both and it's not one or the other. It's the most beautiful. Am I deserving of it? Listen, oh my goodness. Look at the people in the world that don't have food. They don't have anything. I have a friend of mine who owns a coffee estate. He's going to Uganda. He asked me, and I sent out to my friends and family, and he goes, listen, do you have any cell phones? I'm collecting them. I'm going to bring it. I got so many cell phones sitting in my bin in the garage. It's like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Am I deserving of this? Oh my goodness. Yeah, it holds me in perfect tension. If I look at the survival anxieties you list, I'm like, those are the most incredible things that if
Mm-hmm.
we let serve and not make good or bad, it's like, instead of just getting beyond it and getting through it and just like, wow, 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 it's like, no, getting from it. It's like the gifts, acres of diamonds right in front of us. Like, why are we so anxious that we're fighting for survival? We want to survive because we want to benefit. We want to regenerate. Listen, we want to be safe because we want to bring safety to ourselves and to other people. And then we think about, listen, am I enough? And it's like, yeah, I feel enough, but I feel like I'm also not enough, which is like, what's incredible about not feeling enough is you realize you're not ever really doing it truly alone. You get to stand beside the co-creator and create with some force, like, holy smokes, like, this is most, so I can go on and on and on. But to me, it's like, what I see so much in society of people like, I want to be happy, so let's not work over there. And it's like, wait a minute, why is that the bad news? Why have we become so proficient of churning news into bad news? Are we fearing that we're not progressing fast enough so much that it's literally creating the bullshit of our life experience? And then we get to be like, I'm happy, right? I'm happy, right? I'm like, well, just a second. Yeah, you get to be, but maybe like Mother Teresa, if you look at her picture, she's got a subtle smile, a
Mm-hmm.
smile from it. I never remember. I know, sorry, I never forget Tony,
It's a light and a
right?
peace, I think, that she had.
Right? It's a light and a peace because
Yeah.
what you realize, it's all here for me. It's all here for the goodness of. Now,
Yeah.
let's be honest. We all hear the message of, if we think that that's the place where we stay, anything alive moves and it evolves. But we have to not forget, I think we have to not forget where we come from, we have a desire for, and the divine gifts of that spot. And then we get to be like, yeah, we get to be like the animal, and then we get to be the third eye and observe and not have to do anything. We get to be. Like,
Yes.
it's incredible. So I think that's what we're talking about. Like, to accept
Yeah.
that place of like, yeah, I'm a survival being, like an animal, like a mammal, but also I have the ability to just be and to have reflection from that place of not being hyper vigilantly always attending to like all these
Mhm.
exciting things I'm excited about. It's like the rest of the soul just leaning back and being like, yeah, I can take it all. But I think that can only happen. Tell me what you think. I think it can only happen when you make peace and bring safety and see the benefit of all the survival responses that we typically want to get beyond. Like enough,
Yes.
right? Yeah. What's your take on it?
Absolutely. Well, there's a few things in everything you just said which are really important, and one is there's this concept of duality. So when we look at those those core sources of anxiety, those limiting beliefs, and those fear patterns, the five that I talked about, there are two sides to it, right? There's the one that drives us. So if you feel alone in the world, guess what? You're going to develop an incredible amount of strength. You're going to develop an incredible amount of resilience. You're going to figure out how to navigate the trickiest of waters. You're going to learn how to be resourceful because you've learned that nobody else will do that for you. And those are amazing character traits to have. Amazing. What the genius is if you can just get in front of it, understand what those patterns are, then you can stop yourself from it going to an unhealthy place, which means
Mm-hmm.
you learn not to depend on other people because we like to be depended on. We're not meant to be
Mm-hmm.
living alone and in
Mm-hmm.
isolation. We are social
True.
creatures. We
True.
evolved to be community-based creatures. That's why we have this concept of emotional contagion and mirror neurons. So there are these, let me just, I'll go off on a tangent now for a second. We have these things called mirror neurons in our brains, which have allowed us to develop empathy. And why that worked and why that developed was because we needed to learn how to cooperate and look after each other in groups or in
Mm,
community. That's how we evolved to live. And so, if you can just get in front of it, figure out how to use it as your strength. Oh my God, guess what? I
mm-hmm.
learned to be incredibly resourceful, but whoa, I need to dial it back because I'm not relying on my
Mm,
business partner, or I'm not relying on my spouse, or I'm not empowering my team or my children to allow them in the long run to do better for themselves and to do good work. And so sometimes you have to delegate and you have to
mm,
keep teach,
mm,
coach, and mentor. But that's one side. Then there was another piece of it's not just understanding your survival mechanisms. It's more than that. I think there's another huge piece of this puzzle missing is that we weren't really given any tools to learn how to be happy or successful. Now, you can read all the success books. I certainly read most of the great business books and great
mm-hmm.
success books, Habits of Successful People, The Four Laws, From Good to Great, you name
Mm-hmm.
it. I've,
Mm-hmm.
personal and the business books, but still there was something missing, and I came to realize in my coaching practice it's my job to get in. I have a client sitting in front of me, and it's my job to look at them and say, wow, they seem so together. Why are they not where they want to be in their life? So I have to get into their model of the world, figure out where they constructed their mental and emotional blocks and their walls. So imagine living in a house, and I've got to figure out, how did you construct this house? Because it's my job as the coach to pull those walls down and create more possibility and create an opening for you to be able to build something
Mm-hmm.
bigger and fresher and new. And what I came to realize is part of in doing that is we conceive of a plan, we define some goals, and we define a plan to get there. And when I had them visualize the end state, what they would feel like, what it would look, sound, and feel like when they hit that goal, very few of them could actually tell me it would make them any happier.
Mm,
And I thought, well, that's profound. Why on earth would you be chasing a goal if you don't know if it's going to bring you joy or certainty or love or freedom or wealth or better health? What whose life are you living here? And so I came to realize these are the marching orders most of us got. It was do well in school,
mm-hmm.
then it was do well in high school, pick a
Mm-hmm.
career, pick a major, maybe choose a college or university or get a job, work your way up the corporate ladder, get the house, get the car, get the kids, get the dog, maybe. And at some point, happiness, I'm sorry, where was that in that equation?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so we're all just stumbling through, trying to find our way through. What's this thing called balance? What's this thing called inner peace? What on earth is happiness anyway? And I chased happiness until I think it made me quite miserable, to be honest with you. I
Mm-hmm.
had the idyllic life, the life filled with, a great career and lots of money and lots of wonderful things and great travel and adventure, and I had great friends, but something was still missing. And I thought, what is that
Mm-hmm.
missing piece? And how can I define that for myself and bring it into balance? And I realized the other piece of it was giving people a prescriptive plan for how to define happiness for you, because it's not a
Mm,
one size fits all plan. It really is very personal. James, what makes you happy is going to be very different than your siblings or your parents or your friends or your colleagues. Same for me. If someone said, go and do these 5 workouts in a week, chances of us being 100% aligned, even on just a workout, let alone what we like to eat in our diet, let alone when we like to get up in the morning and finish for the day. Everyone has a unique formula. And I think
mhm,
many of us discovered this
mm,
during COVID
mhm,
when we had a little more freedom and
mm,
flexibility to play with time
mm,
because we didn't have to commute for 2 hours a day anymore. And so what does that personal plan for happiness look like? And what I found is you can actually document in hours per
mm,
day or
mhm,
hours per week how much you need in every area of your life wheel so that you can really feel your best. And you use that word thriving earlier. Well, if you're living somebody else's plan for happiness, how on earth are you ever going to reach
mm,
a state of happiness yourself? It's time to dial it back and just say, okay, what are those keys that unlock
mm,
it for you? What makes you feel the most alive, the most successful? What makes you feel like you're in a state of optimal health and well-being and have that energy? Like what makes you light up
mm.
is so unique to you. It has something to do with your passions, your purpose, your unique gifts and talents. And yes, they are tied back to some of those skills that you developed by having those survival mechanisms. So it's kind of a formulaic pattern. And if you can just unlock the key to empower that for yourself, I think that's a game changer.
Some degree, and I hear what you're talking about. If we're not careful, we get easily stuck with focusing on survival. We want
Yes.
to appreciate survival, and then we want to utilize survival to help us leverage and go like, now let's thrive. Meaning, if we can feel really safe and build a healthy relationship with our survival anxieties, make them safe. Okay. When we do this, then all of a sudden, what ends up happening is we get unstuck. Focusing on one thing only is stuckness. When there's a few things, so it's a little bit like the polarity, like something in me says, are you alive? Are you staying alive? Are you sure you're alive? So this constant, and then there's the other side that says, oh, just relax, James. Just you get to be. And so these two, it's not in spite of, it's because of. And it's like, whoa, this is like electrifying peace, is what I call it. So instead of like floating away in peace, it's like electrifying. Like there's life. Peace isn't, there's nothing going on. There's lots going on inside of peace.
Yeah.
It's electrifying. It's incredible. And so the unstuckness, I think, often comes when in that survival modality, I'll just call it that way. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but inside that modality, when we can appoint and strategically look which of these feelings that erupt are we afraid of? And when we're afraid of that fear, those are the controlling ones. So, in my opinion, to focus on that and say, this is the thing that was sent to set me free, not when I run past it and process past it, but do
Mm-hmm.
the work and bring safety to that. Because let's be honest, you and I, as coaches, we know all emotions are actually safe. It's our job to make them that. So, listeners, just tap into where you're at in life right now and just think about some survival responses that come up for you and which one tends to make you feel stuck and you just keep coming back to the same thing and you wish it wasn't there. That thing that you wish wasn't there, that thorn in your flesh, the thorn in the side that you feel, that's the very thing that's sent to bring you and transform and transcend you into the next stage of life if you let it. If you let it. And you got to let the light in. And
Yes.
so and so something to consider is how would you make that safe? And the only way that I know how to do this in really simplistic form is anything the body assumes is dangerous, it does not act on. So you have to create new want and new need for it. If you don't have a want or need, you will always think it's dangerous. You'll never take a step. But if you say, how could I create a new need and a new want for this? All of a sudden, it will go from dangerous to safe. And therein lies you made that emotion safe in the moment. And now you can utilize the gain that that survival anxiety emotion actually is. You're no longer afraid of it. So now it serves you. Now you get to dance with your fear. And it's like, who doesn't want to dance in the rain? Who doesn't want to dance in the sunshine? We love to dance. Dancing is not in spite of all the stuff that we pushed aside and pushed down that someday our generations are going to have to experience. But it
Yes.
is to well utilize and be like, listen, whatever you want, whatever you choose to lean on, universe, God, I mean, whatever that ends up being, but I get to participate that all things that were created were good. It's up to me to discover the disguised gift buried everywhere and to stop labeling it and to do honor and be like my ancestors perhaps felt this was unsafe. And I can see why they would have. But here's the thing, emotions, and I want to have your perspective on this. I have a simple way of saying what emotions actually are. So when we feel anxiety or feel joy, emotions, all they actually are is they're priming us to take the next proper action. That's all emotions are. Emotions are never for us to wrap around and stay stuck. Emotions are here to say, I feel this now for what reason? Well, it's driving inside of me. What do I want to do next? They're not to wrap around and hold and attach to. And like, if you're afraid of the fear, you're just like walking around it. But
Yeah.
what's your take on what do you think emotions actually are? Because when you talk about 6 weeks to happy, happy is an emotion. That's what it ends up being. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think of happiness as a state of being, but I think we have been programmed to think of positive emotions as something, yes, we'll pay attention to. And we have been trained for some reason to ignore the negative emotions or to push them down and try to bury them. But if we can get to a place, as you're saying, where emotions are neither good or bad,
Mm-hmm.
they're just coming up, and
Mm-hmm.
they're coming up for a reason. They're coming up because we need to process them and move through them. And if we can just get to a place where we can master the emotions, there's a simple exercise we've learned in the coaching world called the pain paradigm. Because so we have four bodies: the spiritual or energetic body, the mental, emotional, and physical bodies. And if we are not paying attention to our mental and emotional bodies, or our energetic body, meaning, this is, I think, where spirituality and science meet, right? If you think
Mm-hmm.
of God or the universe or source, you can think of it in terms of spirituality. Energy flows from source into us. If you think of it in terms of science, we are energy. We are made up of atoms,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a finite amount of energy every day. We can't exist without sleep or
Mm-hmm.
food or water. And so learning how to balance our energy systems is really key. And then if we're not processing, thoughts and feelings when they come up, it's going to translate into physical pain, inflammation, physical health issues like high blood pressure, cardiac issues, chronic inflammation, physical injury, and pain. And what that is when we think of our physical body, we can't just think in terms of nutrition and exercise, but we also have to think in terms of other things. And so I've had clients come to me who are in physical pain, let's say with a back injury, and I have had back injury, which I've actually pretty much healed myself from. I don't know many people that have a back injury that are pain-free most days. So that's a beautiful thing. But if you can get on top of it, and it's a really simple exercise, and it just goes like this: where's your pain level now from 0 to 10? Let's
Mm-hmm.
say okay, it's at an 8. Great. Guess what you do next? What emotion are you feeling now? And they have to use the words, I am feeling. So
Mm-hmm.
I am feeling anxiety. Okay, great. Take a
Mm-hmm.
deep breath. And what emotion are you feeling now? And they just go through a list of emotions. And
Mm-hmm.
all that really does is it allows your mental and emotional body to say, oh, it's okay to process. Finally, I can just let them out. Just like saying the freaking word.
You're literally by offering, it's like I think Tony talks about this, like one option is no option, two or like one choice is no choice, two options is no option. When you bring something beyond, moving beyond duality, the brain actually, the human being wants to go there. You're just activating the third eye. You're being like, what's the third thing? What's the fourth thing? Like they say a two-stranded rope can be easily snapped. The third stranded rope, not so easy anymore.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And so just processing those feelings as you go through this exercise, somehow, miraculously, someone's physical pain actually drops till you get them, and you don't stop until you get them to 0.
Mm-hmm.
And they are amazed.
Mhm.
And it's just one simple exercise where you can get on top of your emotions. So if you're driving home from work and you're feeling stressed for the day, and you can feel that, that tightness in your chest or the tension in your shoulders, so your shoulders are up by your ears, and you can just say, whoa, just take 6 deep breaths. What it does is it triggers your
Hmm.
parasympathetic nervous system, signals your brain to say it's okay to unwind and be calm again. 6 deep breaths with a slow exhale is the biggest, quickest neuro hack to
Hmm.
calm stress and anxiety. And then just ask yourself, what am I feeling now? And just say, I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling anxious. And it all it does is
Hmm.
it just gives you an opening to release those. And I
Hmm.
promise you, after 10 minutes, you're going to feel shifted. You're going to feel
Hmm.
transformed. You're just going to feel lighter and freer simply because you've allowed yourself to voice the things that you've been burying for so many years. And there's freedom in that.
Trying to flee your man, so many things come up for heart to me when you mention that. I think trying to flee your presence, when I say I think,
Mhm.
it doesn't work. So when I feel certain things, and to your point, when you bring out some options, like what am I feeling now? Okay, I'm feeling that. Okay. And it isn't like throwing in the surrender flag. I don't participate with it, but it's like, what else am I feeling? What else am I feeling? The way I look at it is this: as soon as we tap back into the beauty of life, is that we get to embrace reality for exactly as it is. Oh my goodness. The exit to all suffering begins, because it's like
Mhm.
this. I feel really tired. I wish I wasn't so tired. Okay, can I accept that I feel more tired than I am? Okay. Okay. All of a sudden it's like, you know what? Oh my goodness, the stability when you're like, you can accept it for worse than it is. All of a sudden
Mhm.
now it's like, I'm indestructible. I'm indestructible. Do with me as you wish. Do with myself as you wish. I'm indestructible. So I think to myself, the greatest gift, like the calming agent, is the stress that comes. It's the gift in disguise. It says, I'm here for you. What are you going to do? And it's not like I'm the enemy that's come to destroy you. No, no, no. It's like, listen, stand guard at the door of the mind. And you go like, oh, stand guard, meaning like you're not my enemy. You're actually coming to remind me that I just need to breathe deeply, and I get to choose the authority over myself, and I get to make safe all this anxiety, and I get to accept that even if it's 10 times worse than I think, I'll still be okay. Okay. All of a sudden it's like, all of a sudden everything just begins like water off a duck's back. And
This
I
is
go
genius,
ahead.
what you're
Mhm.
saying. It's genius. I'm sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, I mean, I speak so passionately about this because I was once on the other side. I tried to flee my presence constantly. I tried to eliminate all of these feelings. I was very successful. Let's say in my eyes, very. I had houses, vacations, investments, all these things.
Yes.
And then I finally got so miserable because what I once used and I thought was working well no longer worked. And I checked out of life for 2.5 years. My listeners will know this. But if you
Yeah.
do life and you try to convince yourself, because I try to think my way through and try to eliminate, going, well, if that hadn't happened, and tried to like stomp that out and stomp it out. Finally, I woke up to my stupor basically after about 2 years. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to change this experience, and it's horrible. Like I almost lost my business, almost lost my marriage, almost lost my kids, all this stuff. And also I'm like, I better just try something different. I'm like, what can I try? I'm like, let's do the opposite. You know what the opposite was? Let's start utilizing all this. And I'm like, oh shit, utilize this? How? No, I've been doing all this work for 2 years. And I thought, well, if I don't do it now, it may just all fall apart. So I just
Yeah.
decided, let's just calm down
Yeah.
and let's just look at it. Okay. And you know what? Honestly speaking, I love your passion towards the happy and the genuine happy, but it comes from someplace. Tap in with our listeners, and we've talked a little bit prior to the recording of the show. Like your
Mhm.
ultimate goal is to get this book, get 6 week, get it into schools. Okay, this is what self development, is all for. It isn't just so that we can experience happiness, but
Yeah.
so it actually comes from our desire to be a beneficial human, because we all feel best when we enjoy ourselves most. And obviously, something from your birth has been pulling you. There's a unique part of you. We're all, so you're unique. Unless we do unique journey stuff, we're never getting anywhere. And so there's something that's been pulling you right from the beginning,
Yeah.
regardless of your story that you've all had in life. Something that's pulled you right from the beginning, and it's returning you to the deepest of remembrance of who you are and the strength and the power that you've got. And it isn't just so that you can live an abundant life yourself. Like, who cares about that horse garbage? I could say another word to horse garbage, but horse crap. Let's say it like this. It is so that we can finally be a beneficial human. We can be a human that finally isn't concerned about how we can achieve getting beyond creating the problem for ourselves and then solving our problem. It's finally to say, how can it be beneficial? How can I finally take all of what's here, not just so to trap here and say, well, now I'm good. I've got a line in the sand. I don't need to grow anymore. No, 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 no. You, my friend, have chosen to grow and you've chosen to say, oh, I've just begun. So tell me, why the school? What's in you? Just go.
Well, where it all began was, I was born in South Africa during apartheid, so it was a complex time to be, living with racial segregation, and we lived in separate neighborhoods, separate schools, and it's a very confusing set of circumstances to expose a young child to. I don't think we are
Mm,
equipped to handle how to process that kind of a situation, discrimination and humiliation and really no reason for it. And so, Helen Keller said it perfectly, where she said, kids have no concept of time. They really have no concept of time until one day something quite traumatic happens that forces them to answer the question, why? And at that point, the clock starts. And so what happened for me is, the public beaches were reserved so in South Africa, you have the whites and the non-whites, and then the non-whites are further segregated into colored and black, and the blacks were the pure Africans, and everyone in between Caucasian and pure African was in this bucket of colored people. And so for whatever reason, you were separate entrances to the post offices and government buildings. We were not allowed access to public beaches, if you can imagine that. Shocker that I live in Miami right now on the beach, because I needed to make that dream come true. So as a young child, let's say I was 3 years old, South Africa has beautiful beaches, white sand, blue water. And I remember begging my parents, please take us to the beach, please take us to the beach, please take us to the beach. And for the longest time, they said no. And I always get this like rerun of The Simpsons and Bart Simpson's character. Please, can we go up, like relentless? We finally broke them down, and they said, okay. And I cannot imagine what it's like for a parent to know their child is just about to go through a life-changing experience where they're going to feel something awful.
mm,
And this was that moment for me. And I got to this beach, and I remember I was so excited. I took my shoes off and I was running in the sand, and my feet were getting hotter and hotter, because if you're running in
mhm,
hot sand,
mhm,
it doesn't take
mhm.
long. And I kept seeing the beautiful beach, kept seeing the sign that said whites only, kept seeing the beautiful beach, kept running until I came to this wooden door that said non-whites. And I pushed it open, and I didn't see the beautiful beach. What I
Mm.
saw was people had thrown garbage and broken bottles and rubbish over the fence. And I saw these big dark sand dunes, but I was still little determined little me. It was like, oh, I'm still going to get there. And so I started running up and down these sand dunes until I stood side by side with my sister on the last sand dune. And the decision I made for myself in that moment, the why was, wow, why am I here? This is
Mm,
not where I wanted to be. I wanted to be over there on the beautiful beach. Why am I here?
mm,
And my little inside unconscious voice said, oh, I guess I'm not good enough. Skin color,
mm,
gender, who knew? At that point, we are story making machines as humans. As long as time
mm,
existed, we started telling ourselves stories. And the little story I told myself was this: later on in life, now a teenager, I always just had big goals and big dreams for myself. And I had this inexplicable inner knowing. And I think that's the soul, that spirit, that fierce part of me that was like, you are meant for great things. And
mm,
this story of you not feeling enough, that's got to go at some point. You're going to need to figure out how
mhm,
to shift that,
mhm.
because that does not align with the life you want, my dear. And so I set down a path of trying to unpack this really for myself. And it took me the better part of 30 years to get to this point, studying so many different fields: psychology, neuroscience, the studies of the subconscious, then positive psychology.
We
So
are
now,
messy humans, right? The power, you chose the power of being in the messy instead of outside. You tried probably like I did to be outside the messy. And you're like, actually, I thrive in the messy. I love
yeah.
not just that I get to help other people in their messy, but I'm a messy person. If you get to know
Well,
the inside of me, I'm tremendously messy. All right.
that's so genius what you just said, because what I came to discover was you can avoid it for as long as you want, but you can't outrun it.
You
It's the
can't
human.
deny it. You're going to try to think your way into denial. That doesn't work. You can't flee yourself. The reality is there. When you finally go, actually, I feel more comfortable with who I am on the inside, living it even on the outside, it's power.
Yes. And if you come to understand what those unconscious patterns are, there's so much power in this. And now I'm going to go into a really wacky
Please.
description,
Love it.
which is, and now I know if you're a Carl Jung fan or Sigmund Freud fan and you've studied the unconscious, subconscious, Carl Jung is one of my favorites. He developed, it
Yeah.
was his foundation of work that started the Myers-Briggs personality test, and he did a deep, deep dive into the ideas of the universal consciousness into the unconscious. And he said, until we bring what's unconscious into the conscious, we are going to keep projecting it into our world.
Mm.
He even went so far as to say that you will marry the unhealed parts of yourself until you learn and grow through them. So, if the human journey and reaching our peak potential is really about mastery over our own emotions and thought patterns and fear patterns, it's really not that difficult to do.
Mm. Mm.
Really, all you need is the tools to get there. And so, you asked about what my vision was, and I thought, it took me 30 years, and how many different self-development courses and rah-rah weekends and week-long retreats and books did I read and degrees did I take to get to this point where I could unpack it for myself and finally be in better health and have more inner peace and have more joy, freedom, success, wealth, and abundance that I could ever dream of. But I thought, what if we reached kids at 8 or 10 or 12 or 18
Mm.
and gave them these tools so they didn't have to take 30 years to unpack it, so they could figure out how to align their four body system and be in optimal health from such a young age, to not have to go through all of that turmoil and despair and suffering that we all went through as teenagers and in our 20s. And oh my God, some of that nobody wants to relive. There were some tough dark days in there. But what if we could empower them with the tools to
Mm.
understand how the brain was wired, how our central nervous systems,
Mm.
respond to
Mhm.
stress and negative events in our lives, and how to shift that story to
Mm.
one that empowers you instead of one that has you stuck? How different would the world look then?
I can't think of any spiritual leader that the world would recognize that didn't, to a sizable degree, always function outside the structure. And by that, I don't mean to say that being like I'm the dad in the house and I'm a husband, and my wife is the wife in the house, and she's sorry, the mother in the house, and she's my wife. And so being outside the structure doesn't mean you can't lead. What it just looks like. And so, for example, I'm just going to focus on one spiritual figure, Jesus. Jesus chose powerless power. Buddha, powerless power. The powerless power is to say, no matter how I try to make myself pure, I will always discover that there's more messy in here. The purity culture is a lie. It doesn't work. When you finally realize I'm powerless to change the fact that I'm a messy, beautiful, lovely human being, you can finally accept the reality of who you are. And when you can accept the reality of who you are, instead of fighting like, oh, there I go again. See, I messed up. Oh, there. Instead being like, actually, I've had enough of that. I'm exhausted from trying to make myself pure. I'm exhausted. I used to read personal development books so I could get rid of stuff. Now I'm like, oh no. I just want to enjoy more of who I am. Don't get me wrong. I don't, repeat patterns that I can see are unhelpful toward myself and other people. But the whole play is, what can you now create from a place of going, yeah. I'm powerless. I have a powerless power. It seems so subversive. But the thing is, it's the most incredible peace, because you don't have to be God. You don't have to be source. I get to be human. Oh my goodness. Now, from this place, what can I create? Think about it. If we're not willing to make mistakes, we're never going to create anything. So I think it takes tremendous courage. One of my last thoughts for you is I think it takes a lot of courage. I'd like to hear what you think to actually bring forward the thing that has been calling us home from the day we were born, taking us back to our home. It takes tremendous courage to action that because nobody will understand that the way we do. And so when we first bring it, they're like, I'm not sure. But that's because we're not sure. So they model the same thing. And then what we end up doing typically is we tend to think, well, they're not sure. So perhaps the thing we should do is reject it in ourselves. And they go, oh, that doesn't look good on you. So we're going to reject that in you too. Then all of a sudden we go like, actually, I've had enough. I'm exhausted. We've had our moment. 30 years later, we're like, you know what? I think I'm going to try some different. I'm just going to accept the silly that I am. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
I was trying to get rid of the nutsness that I am, but actually it's because of the fact that I'm nuts. And so we embrace that. And all of a sudden society goes, you're enjoying yourself. I think we like that nutsness about you. So this is the whole thing. It's like it's actually a setup. It sets us up to transform and to embrace and to enjoy. And so here's the question that I have for listeners. While we're talking here, Zahara, you just is fantastic. And I got one final question for you, but here is a thought that I have. And I think most of us, and I don't want to like project this into our lives, but I wonder if this isn't partially what's happening to us all the time when something shows up and it's a new threshold, something that's a deeper anxiety, something that we maybe push down, and you know how we have this, we have this haunted house beside us, but we like to take our ghosts and shove it in there and try to keep it down.
Hmm.
All of a sudden,
Hmm.
something happens where those ghosts are coming up, and we got to deal with things. I think, and listeners, again, just feel this within yourself. If survival is the first thing we go to, I know for me what happens within, and my children say the same happens for them, and my wife similar. But what we do is we ask ourselves the question, do I have the ability to handle this? And what's interesting about ability for me anyway, is something that I look upon as, do I have reference? Meaning, have I experienced this before? And if it's a new thing, we've never experienced it before. I think to stay at, do I have the ability? The answer, the survival brain will say no, because you've never done it before, which makes logical sense. Thanks for sharing with me reality. The only thing that I sometimes think about is, and tell me what you think, because I'd be eager to hear your opinion on this one. But I go from, instead of saying, do I have the ability, adding a few words, I say, do I have the ability and the capacity? Because
Hmm.
the ability is like, well, I don't know. I've never done it before. But the capacity,
Hmm.
listeners, ask yourself this question. When haven't you doubted that you had the ability and the capacity, but you did it anyway? What does the evidence support? You fucking did it and you survived. That's incredible. It's a miracle, but you
Yes.
participated with it. So, what's your take on all of this?
Well, there's a lot to unpack in that whole discussion. So, firstly, I think the idea, most people think they need the confidence or the capabilities or the skills before they can even begin down
Mm-hmm.
a road. But if anyone ever started a new job they were nervous about, or what's the most terrifying thing I can think of is to have a child, because
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, you have to look after another person. You have to
Mm-hmm.
bring this little baby into the world, figure out how to make it safe, figure out how to make it feel loved, and you have to set it up for success in life. Oh my God, that's one of the biggest undertakings you can take on as a human being. And I'm sorry, how many of us didn't just go ahead and get it done anyway? Yes, you were terrified. Yes, you did it anyway. And guess what? We all did pretty well, didn't we? We all got through just fine. And probably your kids are fine. I know I made lots of mistakes. I gave my parents a really hard time growing up, but you know what? I turned out just fine. And so if we can
Did you
just,
though? Just kidding.
yes, God, yes.
I'm
I
just
mean,
poking you. Of course you did. I'm just
I
poking.
think my
I'm just
energy speaks
actively.
for itself.
Hey, I'm just activating your survival response and getting real with reality. So I'm just playing. Sorry. Of course you did. I'm
It's
just being
all
silly.
good.
I'm being silly.
It's all good. But I think you're absolutely right. And it's that whole idea of appreciating the messiness. It's sort of, what is this journey of life? If we are meant to, if what it means to be human is to find some form of mastery over how we manage life events and how we manage thoughts and emotions as they
Mm-hmm.
come to us, then guess what happens? You're going to continuously be confronted with it. And the longer you try to numb it or run away from it, it's going to come closer and closer and closer until it smacks you in the face. And
Hmm.
you have no recourse. You have no choice but to deal with it in that moment. And if we could just stop naming it good or bad, if we could just stop
Hmm.
naming it positive or negative, and if we could just say, okay, this thing has come up again, let me explore, let me deal with it, let me see how I can shift the narrative, shift my mindset, and just move past it. Everything just unlocks in life.
Hmm.
Start to have more opportunities show
Hmm.
up, wealth and
Hmm.
abundance. I mean, it feels like it's just raining on you. Your health suddenly miraculously starts to improve just because you're handling your mental and emotional bodies better. Well, that's a nice little benefit. You can tap into your mind body connection and your body's natural intelligence because it has its own healing capabilities. And the more you study in this area and the more you learn about it, the more you realize there's so much untapped potential and so much untapped power. If you can just take 10 to 20 minutes per day and start on these practices to be in a joyful and grateful state of mind from the moment you wake up, to suspend your disbelief and allow yourself to move past the messiness, as you
Hmm.
call it, or the fear or the stuckness, and just say, okay, I see you showing up. Today's the day. I'm going to let you not stop me. I'm going to thank you
Hmm.
instead. Say,
Good job. Hmm.
what do I choose to feel instead? And if you're choosing to feel, and this is how I meditate in the morning, is I choose to feel peaceful, calm, happy, grateful. If you're waking up in the morning and you're starting the day consciously choosing to allow those feelings to vibrate through your body, it
Hmm.
changes your energy. And I promise you, nobody's going to wake up in the morning and say, oh, today I choose to feel tired and stressed again because that was so much fun yesterday. Most people, right? I mean, who would want that? Most people would want to wake up and say, I'm so grateful. I mean, if you're able to shift your mindset, I wasn't able to be on a beach. Now I live on one of the most
Hmm.
beautiful beaches. Okay, if you can accomplish that, that's pretty wonderful. So if you can consciously choose how you want to feel, I promise you, you can't feel peaceful and stressed at the same time. If you're
Hmm.
feeling stressed and anxious, you're in survival mode again. That's a quick recognition. That's a
Hmm.
quick tool for you to say, am I in the right mindset? If instead you can just stop and ask yourself, take a deep breath and just
Hmm.
say, how do you want to feel instead? And if you want to feel peaceful or empowered or grateful, I promise you, you can feel peaceful and joyful at the same time. You can feel peaceful and deserving at the same time. You can feel peaceful and ready to tackle your goals
Hmm.
at the same time. But if you're feeling stressed and anxious, chances of you getting there are very
Hmm.
slim.
It's like, I love it. Like, thank you so much, anxiety, for showing up. Thank you. Thank you, because you're helping me and you're priming me right towards the next emotion. So thanks for setting me up. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Like, to have deep honor for that emotion, like deep honor.
Yes.
Thank you for being here for me. I really appreciate you keeping me safe. It's incredible. I'm just, yeah, I'm looking around. You help me never to be overtly reckless. Like, it's by default. Wow, thank you so
Mhm.
much. You got me ready to now do this thing. Well, if it wasn't for you, I don't know if I wouldn't have the intuition to take the next thing. But thank you, and so I honor you, and so I just want you to know, anxiety. I take you with me wherever I go. You are in the back seat, and you're not the driver. But I want you to know that I listen to you and I honor you, and thank you for that. Like, you bring me such
Yes.
beautiful peace because I get to decide what I want to do. I get to be a human being. The third eye opens up, right? So here's the
That's
deal,
exactly, and you're
right?
integrating the unconscious and
Right.
the conscious mind at that point. And when you
Mhm.
do that, everything shifts, everything opens up.
I love what you said about intelligence. To
Mm.
me, intelligent looks a bit like this: to restore people back to the authority and to the capacity that they've always been.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't to like stand between them and the mirror and say, you can't handle this, let me handle it for you. No, no, no. But and you and I, and listeners, in moments in life, when you literally have looked and done something about the thing that you thought was sent to take you down, and you just turned your face towards it and like, okay, bring it, bring it. I'm going to see now if they're the capacity. And you just let yourself, that moment, you experience something incredible. It's the ascending into a new life. You know what that
Yes.
takes? Not running from your messy. When it is there, just turn your face towards it. Just turn your face towards it. You'll be okay. You have
Yes.
the capacity. You will be okay. We know you're going to be okay. Just be with it. It'll be fine. You're just fine. You're just
Absolutely.
fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, where can people find your fantastic work? Which, by the way, we didn't get to talk at all about your book, and I kind of did it on purpose because I want people to be intrigued, and I want them to be really drawn to what is in this lady's writing. And I'll just kind of like at suspense, I'll kind of bring you listeners to the awareness. She has a rewire system. It's R-E-W-I-R-E. And the W in the rewire is, what do you need? Well, that's a nice one because people are like, wow. The R and the E, I'll let that for you to discover later on. The R is repeat and rewire, and the E is to elevate. But there's another one that's really powerful. You need to go there because it is a big one. So you need to go and discover the book. Go to Amazon. I think yeah, it's available on Amazon, is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So where can people find you? Where can people find you and your work if they want to connect with you, chat with you, send you a message? Which, by the way, listeners, send Zahra, send me a little message and just say, hey, thanks for the podcast if you liked it today. But where can people find you for your work?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, yeah, so the rewire system is what is the methodology in the book where I teach people the science of happiness that I've
Hmm.
discovered. And you get to learn 3 tools per week over 6 weeks, which really rewires your brain and retrains your body back to balance, away from survival. And so you can get on the road towards happiness and success. And the book is called 6 Weeks to Happy. And the tool I talked about, where you can start to define your personal plan for happiness that is authentically and uniquely you, is available for your audience. So all they have to do is go to 6weekstohappy.com and just download it for free and get on the road to happiness and success today. Life is too short. There's no need to wait.
There you go, listeners. Who doesn't want to get on the road to happiness? It's the most incredible journey. You're going to discover a few things. Capacity is one of them. You got this. Thanks for being on the call, Sahara. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, James.
With inflation rates rising, interest rates shooting up, gas prices skyrocketing, and the continued global unrest, it's easy to find what's wrong in the world. Tony Robbins says, what's wrong in the world is always available, but so is what's right. Instead of trying to hope and wish the world into a better place, it's time to make the most important decision any of us can ever make, and that is to invest in yourself. Now, you already know that I've always stood with you as you've navigated the uncertainties of life's reality. However, it's now high time that I step up and take decisive action to walk alongside your current life journey by making myself available to you in a radically new way during these challenging times. For a limited time, I'm inviting you to a 45-minute strategic business life consultation at no charge and no strings attached. This consultation is where you'll regain the reins of your life. It's where you'll gain clarity on exactly why you're stuck, moving you directly towards your optimal outcomes. I'm humbled to say, however, my clients' generous reflection of their time spent with me reveals the truth. The skills they've been able to master in a short period of time by engaging in our one-on-one strategic sessions have changed their lives in so many ways. This is the only invitation that I can fathom that will put my skin in the game of your life in such a way that will allow us to address your specific needs with precision and excellence. 45 minutes, just you and I, together on a call to get you headed in the direction you crave most. Here's what my clients report after our one-on-one sessions. A decrease in indecision, an increase in clarity, confidence, and courage, an increase in fully being able to capitalize on what's directly in front of them, an increase in impact at work, on their families, and on their communities, a decrease in pain and suffering, and a decrease in anxiety. So, if you want to move beyond old stories, get clear on where you're headed so that you can shake your world, then here's a rich opportunity for you today. Simply go to www.jameshepner.com and stay on the page for about 45 seconds or so, and you'll see a little pop-up appear that will allow you to book in your business life consultation with me. This offer will expire and fill up. Maximizing this opportunity will set you up to reclaim and regain any of your inner power that has slowly been drawn down over these challenging times. And remember, if you want to stop the self-sabotage, raise your standards, and participate with unshakable confidence, you'll want to take the Maximize Your Life quiz found at www.jameshepner.com/quiz right now. My sincere hope is that you've gleaned a few nuggets for yourself and a few pieces of interest that help you move forward in your unique journey. So again, I thank you for joining me here. This is James Hepner clocking out. Until next time, peace out, rock up.